welcome back to Cardboard Brewing Company. Ah, you saw my 10 artifacts video and you want some instants now. I got you. Come take a look. Let's start off with a really unique card. It's kind of a doozy, and I'll actually give you two cards. They're really similar. The weaker one is called Turf Wound. It's a 3-mana instant. Target player can't play lands this turn, and you get to draw a card, which is a pretty powerful effect. And I think the more powerful effect is Moonhold, which is a 3-mana, but now we've got Boros Hybrid here. And it's an instant. Target player can't play lands this turn if red was spent to play Moonhold, and can't play creature cards this turn if white was spent to play it. Both really interesting cards that are going to stop a player from playing their land for turn, and maybe a creature as well. And they're both different too, obviously. Turf Wound, you've got no lands allowed for one player, but you get to draw, which is a really nice effect. It's nice to be able to cantrip this out a little bit. Moonhold's going to essentially say, skip a turn, if they're a creature-heavy deck anyways, because they don't get to play a land and they can't play creatures as long as you spent red and white on the card. It's such an interesting way to skip a player's turn, because it doesn't overtly say skip target player's turn. That player can still cast things, but if you play it on the right player during their upkeep, you cast this so that they can't play that first land drop, and they can't play creatures. Maybe on the turn that you knew they were going to play their commander, you just Moonhold them on their upkeep, and now they can't do that, and they have to do something else. A really fun use of this card is if you're not going first in the game. Moonhold is essentially setting the player who went first in the game to the last in the game, right? They get to miss a land drop for a turn. They can't play creatures for a turn. That land drop is really important for keeping the tempo up. So this card has a really cool slot of not being a blowout, ridiculous card, but it has a way for you to keep tempo up. Especially if you were playing last in the game, it moves your position up one so that you're ahead of one player now just by stopping them from playing that one land drop per turn. I think the sweet spot for this card is mid-game. Late game, the extra land drops don't matter. Early game, you don't really want to skip your turn to make somebody else skip their turn, because then neither of you are ahead. You want to cast this somewhere where like turn 4, turn 5, probably 5 is a good slot for it, where you stop somebody from playing that next land, and now you've moved yourself up a position in turn order, which is kind of like gaining a turn or skipping somebody else's turn. I like Moonhold better than Turf Wound, but based on the deck and based on what colors are available in your deck, you could use either, because I think the land drop missing part of the card is the most important. But like I said, Moonhold's going to stop players from playing lands and creatures, which actually eliminates so many cards that are potentially playable for that turn, where Turf Wound isn't really hitting that much stuff. It's just hitting a land. But that card draw might matter in a specific deck. Moonhold is a really interesting instant, and I think it's going to make a really big splash when you get to use it on that turn 4 or 5 play. This card might be my favorite on the list, mostly because the art is so good. Peerless Recycling is a 2-mana instant that says gift a card. So you get to pick an opponent, and you give them a card if you want to. You get to choose that effect or not. And whether you choose to give somebody a card or not affects the rest of the text on the card. The rest of the card says return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. If the gift was promised, instead return 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. So really, if you're giving somebody a card, this is a 2-mana instant that draws you 2 cards from your graveyard. So you're getting 2 of your best cards back from the graveyard for 2 mana at the cost of giving somebody else a card. So how do we make this feel better? Well, firstly, we can look at a card that's similar to it to see if the cost is better. Eternal Witness is a very powerful and common green card used in almost every green deck. It's a 3-mana 2/1. And at 3 mana, it lets you return any card from your graveyard to your hand when it enters the battlefield. Which one's better between these 2 cards? Well, obviously having more options to pull cards from your graveyard's better with Eternal Witness, because you can pick any card, but it costs 1 mana more. Does that 1 mana matter? It does sometimes. I think it does. Now, the benefit of Eternal Witness is that it's a creature, so that you can blink this thing, you can recur it from your graveyard often and do it more than once. So there's a lot of value there in the long term if you're planning to use the enter battlefield effect often. Peerless Recycling in any green deck is going to be a cheaper cost because it's 2 mana, as well as it's only 1 green pip. So it can be run in lots of multicolor deck, like 3, 4, 5 color decks that have green in their mana symbols. Peerless Recycling can slot in there pretty easily. Now, the other thing that we haven't considered is gifting a card to an opponent worth getting that second card from your graveyard? And I think this all depends on what the 2 cards you're going to pick are. You're not always gifting somebody a card with this card. And for 2 mana, returning 1 permanent to your hand, it's decent. It's pretty okay. I would rather gift somebody a card to get that second permanent because I think that second card makes the value of this card way higher. But giving your opponent a card is a big drawback. Thankfully, in Commander, you're playing with 3 other players usually. And so you can play with the player who's behind to give them a card to get them back in the game. Or you pick the player that you're working together with and make a deal with them when you gift them a card. And so now gifting a card becomes an upside, potentially, if you wheel and deal or politic your way into something that's good for you for giving that player a card. I also really like to remember the player who's always missing a land drop. They're 1 mana behind from being able to play the game. And Peerless Recycling is a way that you can like bestow luck on that person and say, hey, I'm going to gift you a card because I want you to play this game with me. So here you go, draw a card and you get 2 cards back for your graveyard. But like you're giving them a chance to hit that 1 land drop that they're missing to be able to even play the game. I think it's cool that this card has an option for that to help out an opponent in a Commander game so you can actually have a real Commander game. But one of the things I like the most about Peerless Recycling, besides the art, because the art is fantastic, is that I really like to play cards out of my graveyard. It's a really powerful effect. Peerless Recycling isn't putting the cards you pick into play, but they are putting them back in your hand. You're getting multiple of them. And I'm always picking the cards that either I need to advance my board, yes, but also what are the cards that my opponents have already removed from the game? They're already a problem for my opponents. I'm going to put them back into play because I know that that card is a problem. And I know that I've probably got better cards than that card in my deck to come out after that card dies for a second time. When my opponents burn 2 removal spells on the same card, I'm a happy guy because the next card I play that they don't know about that's in my hand, they might not have removal for anymore because they burnt their removal on the same card twice, right? I love that about playing out of your graveyard. And Peerless Recycling gives you a really cheap way to get cards out of your graveyard and to bring them back. Now, we can look at some niche things here about Peerless Recycling as well. Remember, it's permanent, so this includes lands. So if you're in a deck archetype that likes to pitch lands into the graveyard for effects, you can use Peerless Recycling to get them back so that you always have land drops available for you every turn. You can also consider this in a Spell Slinger deck. You just might not have as many options for what to hit with it, but copying Peerless Recycling or being able to cast it again for your graveyard with some kind of flashback effect is also really good. What is the permanent that you need that you have to have in your Spell Slinger deck, but your deck is so in on Spell Slinging that it's hard to get that permanent back? Well, Peerless Recycling slots into that deck pretty easily, and it's able to get you those key permanents back for you. Oh, by the way, don't forget to punch your loyalty card by hitting the like button. And we're now introducing the Monarch mechanic for your loyalty card. The last person who liked this video becomes the Monarch and gets an additional punch on their loyalty card at the end of the video. Also, if you're not subscribed, I've got a deal for you. I'll greatly reduce how much I ask people to subscribe to this channel once it hits 1,000 subscribers. Promise. For this next one, I've actually got 3 cards here, all in one card. They're very similar to each other. You'll see what I mean. Let's start with one of my favorites. Thrilling Encore is a 5 mana instant, and it says put onto the battlefield under your control all creatures in all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. This is your 5 mana board wipe insurance. If somebody is behind and they got to reset the board in order to catch up, you just have Thrilling Encore there ready for you. You cast it and you get all the creature cards that were put into the graveyard onto your battlefield now. What a blowout. And there are cards that are very similar to it but have a different effect. The first one being Fresh Meat, which is a 4 mana instant, and it says create a 3/3 green beast creature token for each creature put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn. Or if you want to go down 1 more mana and use a creature for it, you've got Caller of the Claw, which is a 3 mana elf. It's a 2/2 with flash, so basically an instant, right? When Caller of the Claw enters the battlefield, you put a 2/2 green bear creature token onto the battlefield for each non-token creature put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn. These effects are all really similar, but they also have some interesting nuances between them. But the point for these cards is when you've got a board that's looking pretty dang good, instead of putting more cards onto your pretty dang good board, you hold back your mana and make your opponents deal with it. If they're removing 1 card at a time, these cards look a lot less. But more than likely, you're going to have an opponent that's going to play a Damnation or a Wrath of God or something similar that's going to destroy all the creatures on the board. And you're sitting there with a smirk on your face, ready to cast Thrilling Encore to get the whole board back on your side, which is so sick. It's so sick. These cards are the ultimate sandbag cards, and it's a great skill for players to learn what to do in Commander on how much they develop to a board and then how much they protect that board. And these cards are great ways for protecting your board. It all depends on the flavor of your deck. Let's look at the flavors real fast. Thrilling Encore is really good when you've got a lot of non-token creatures on your board. The rest of the board you can't control. Other players are going to have their own creatures. But the big thing here is that when all of your non-token creatures die, you get them back at the end of turn when you cast this thing, in addition to everybody else's non-token creatures. You get no tokens back from this, but you get all the non-token creatures. So look at your decks to see if you're making lots of tokens in the deck, and then maybe consider Thrilling Encore. Caller of the Claw is also in the same boat because it only works when non-token creatures enter the graveyard, and then you get a 2/2 bear token in replacement for them. Caller of the Claw is 3 mana, way cheaper than Thrilling Encore. I'd rather hold up 3 mana than 5, but it all depends on what your non-token creatures are. Do you have a few 4-drops that are on the board that are going to get blown up? Thrilling Encore is way better than 2/2 bears with that. Do you only have 1 and 2-drop creatures on your board? Call of the Cloud might be better. Those 2/2 bears are pretty nice for the 2 mana discount, but it all depends on what those 1 and 2 mana cards do. Thrilling Encore looks better and better, and that's why it costs 5 mana. Are you going to be able to hold up 5 mana? My whole reason for having this card here at 5 mana as a game-changing card is because when you actually sit there and wait for the sandbag moment, for the board wipe that's going to happen, Thrilling Encore is a complete blowout. No one is ready for it except for you. And you just have to have the patience to say, I don't mind if I pass the turn with open mana because I'm going to win the game if nobody deals with my board. And if they do, I'm going to win the game anyways. Really great card. And one thing you can do with Thrilling Encore that's really fun is you can force this to happen too. 5 mana for Thrilling Encore. It's a lot. But if you're sitting on a Blasphemous Act as well for a board wipe, you can board wipe the whole board yourself and blow yourself up plus everyone else's creatures, and then Thrilling Encore afterwards, and you get control of everyone's stuff. So it's a fun little 2-card combo in Rakdos or more colors that you can then use this as an offensive way to get everyone's creatures versus a defensive way to save your own. It's a fun little thing to do. I would highly recommend it. Fresh Meat is where things change a little bit. It cuts the middle. It's 4 mana, but it works with tokens, and that's the nice part about this. You get a 3/3 beast creature token for every creature that you controlled that went to the graveyard, including tokens. If you're in a token deck, Fresh Meat is a slam dunk protection card. I would run it in every green token deck because the biggest weakness to token decks is board wipes, 100%. And lots of token decks, they're like 1/1 cards, maybe 2/2 tokens that you're making in a token deck. I would much rather upgrade all my dead tokens to 3/3s and win the game. And I can tell you, I have run this card in many, many token decks, and I have won so many games off the back of this card. I just developed the board slowly to a point where people have to do something about it, and I have 4 open mana up all the time to blow out the player that's going to try to blow me out. It's so good. I highly recommend running one of these cards, but in a token deck, Fresh Meat for sure. I have looked at a lot of the Lord of the Rings cards, but I've never gone through every single card in the set. I've kind of just like handled them as I've seen them. And I can't believe I didn't know about this card until recently. Isildur's Fateful Strike is a 4-mana legendary instant. And what that means is you have to have a legendary creature or planeswalker on your board in order to even cast this card. If you do, though, you get to destroy target creature. And if its controller has more than 4 cards in hand, they exile cards from their hand equal to the difference. This card is great for the players, especially in control decks, who are sculpting their hand of 7 or more cards to have the best cards that they can get. And they spent turns getting that hand together. And if you don't do anything about it, they're going to overwhelm you with the power of their sculpted hand. Now you just pay 4 mana at instant speed, you kill one of their things, and you nuke their hand down to 4 cards. And even better, it's not that they discard all the extra cards beyond 4. They're exiled. Those cards are gone. You don't have to worry about them at all. Obviously, the player that you hit with this is going to pick their best 4 cards, but you're putting them in a position to try to find out what are their best 4 cards after you cast this before your turn starts. They don't know what your turn's going to be like after this cast happens. Do they need to hold on to some more counter spells? Do they need to have replacement creatures for the thing that you just destroyed? It all depends on the game. It all depends on the circumstance. but Isildur's Fateful Strike is something that you can cast right before your turn starts and obliterate somebody's hand, which is really, really good. It doesn't put the hand to 0. That player's still in the game, but you're going to make them choose what their best 4 cards are. And God forbid you have any way to make them keep discarding after that. I like this card over other discard spells in the game because you're making them exile the cards, and I think that's really important. There are many times in Commander where I've had cards discarded out of my hand, and though up front it may feel bad, in some decks it's actually like really good. I wanted to throw this 8-drop creature in my graveyard and I had no way to do it, and now you gave me an opportunity to, so now I can reanimate that 8-drop, right? Isildur's Fateful Strike is not discarding, it's exiling, so it's a way better way to do that, and it's a lot at once. It's not just one at a time. Discarding 1 card at a time doesn't really matter that much in Commander. Over time, it will pick up if you do like a discard-focused theme. But like just discarding a card randomly doesn't really make that big of a difference. People are just going to pitch a land and be done with it. But the nice thing about this card is not only does it destroy a creature, which is great. You can just use this as removal if you want to. The hand thing doesn't matter that much if you need removal right now. But it does equalize card draw. And card draw is a really powerful thing in Commander. And the players that have more cards in their hand are likely going to have more options, because more cards means more options, to be able to deal with things that are on the board. If you're worried about what a player might have in their hand, just cut off one of their fingers. Just Isildur's Fateful Strike, right? Just take out a half of their hand or more and see what they're going to do with what's left, because you're taking care of their card advantage by doing this. I didn't even know this card existed until this week as of recording, and I don't know how this card flew under the radar so much. It's so good. 1 mana instant called Surge of Salvation. It gives you and permanents you control hexproof until end of turn. And you prevent all damage that black or red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn. So let me go through a couple of applications where this card's great. Any player is targeting your permanents with a removal spell. You could pay 1 mana and counter spell it, right? It's pretty much a counter spell. Any player is using a card that's going to target you for 15 damage, like Devil's Play. You use Surge of Salvation for 1 mana, and you counter it. Incredible. Let's go one step further. Your board is huge, and somebody plays Blasphemous Act. Surge of Salvation negates Blasphemous Act. Incredible. Are red and black damage sources huge in Commander? Not really. It doesn't matter that much. But you can use Surge of Salvation on the block against the player who's using red creatures or black creatures. Think Krenko, and they're swinging out with all their goblins. You can block all their goblins and then Surge of Salvation, and all of your blockers take no damage. Pretty amazing. Surge of Salvation has a lot of uses for it. It costs 1 mana, and the fact that it says you and permanents you control gain hexproof is huge for this card. There are niche effects, but still effects that target players, and those usually are really big effects. They really matter a lot. And so if you can give yourself hexproof in those times, it matters. You're likely not using that very often, but it does come into play, and Surge of Salvation has that as just an added bonus to giving all of your creatures hexproof as well. And it's not just creatures, it's permanents, right? Don't get stuck on the creatures part. The creatures is just for the no damage part for red and black sources. It gives all your permanents hexproof. Everything. It doesn't matter what you're running. If you're in white, you now have a way to have everything have hexproof for a turn right when it matters most, because a player is targeting your most valuable thing. For 1 mana, you get to save it. That's pretty sick. I mean, you could compare this to Heroic Intervention. Heroic Intervention costs 1 mana more, but it gives indestructible and hexproof, which is better. It is better. I totally agree with that. But it's not that much better. For a 1 mana discount, you're giving all of your stuff hexproof. That's pretty dang good. That's a really good rate. And then there's more upside beyond that. I would run a 1 mana card that just gives all my permanents hexproof. If that's all it did, it'd be great. Surge of Salvation does more than that. I think Surge of Salvation is a sleeper. It's going to be coming out of the woodwork here soon and rise in popularity. Get your hands on one if you haven't gotten one yet. All right, how about for a really old card? Synthetic Destiny, a 6 mana instant, very expensive. It says exile all creatures you control, which is a terrible, terrible cost. Why would I want to exile all the creatures I control? Well, because Synthetic Destiny says at the beginning of your next end step, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal that many creature cards. Put all creature cards revealed this way onto the battlefield, then shuffle the rest of the revealed cards into your library. What an interesting card this one is. Where do you use this at? There's a few ways that I would use this, but I think the best spot for a Synthetic Destiny play is in a blue deck that has a lot of enter the battlefield effects. If your creatures are doing really cool effects when they enter, and once they do their enter the battlefield effect, that's it for them. I would rather just cycle them out and exile them to get a whole nother batch of enter the battlefield creatures. It's pretty fun. There was a deck I ran back in the day that was running enter the battlefield effects in Bant, but all of my creatures were like 1/1s and 2/2s. And so a lot of times I would use those 1/1s and 2/2s for their enter the battlefield, then swing at a player for like 8 damage because that's all I get with all of them. And then I'd exile all of them with Synthetic Destiny to then put a whole new batch of 1/1s and 2/2s into play, but I get their sweet enter the battlefield effects and keep up the value that I get from those creatures from entering, and then get my little swings in whenever I can. Another great spot for Synthetic Destiny is in response to a board wipe. This is another insurance card for you in your enter the battlefield effect decks, but they also can matter in other types of decks as well, specifically token decks. If you're in a blue deck that runs a lot of tokens, exiling all of your tokens in response to a board wipe to then replace them with literal creatures from your deck on your next end step is a really good price. It's really awesome. It's basically dodging the board wipe because you're going to replace those tokens with better creatures. And in a blue token deck, you're probably replacing those tokens with actual creatures that make you more tokens. So your board's just going to be bigger in the end anyways. 6 mana is a lot to pay for this effect, but this is just like Thrilling Encore, just in a whole different way, as insurance for your board. When do you stop putting stuff on the board to then be able to dodge some kind of blowout or to get way more value than what you're going to get for what's on your board? That 6 mana could be used for a lot of things, but I would love to have like 7 or 8 creatures enter the battlefield in one turn and do all their enter the battlefield effects all at once. Look at this card with Cathar's Crusade out. You essentially win the game, right? Kinda. You still need to attack with those creatures, but depending on the deck, Cathar's Crusade plus Synthetic Destiny is like a GG moment. The 6 mana on this card scares players away from it, but you should give it a try. I've had some really awesome outcomes with Synthetic Destiny in the past. Onto a card that I've loved since it was revealed, and winning a game with this card just feels so good. It's called Dragon Shift. It's a 3 mana instant that says until end of turn, target creature you control becomes a 4/4 blue and red dragon and loses all abilities and gains flying. So you get to turn one creature into a dragon for a turn. Whoop-de-doo, who cares? Well, the reason why this card is sick is because it has Overload. You could pay 7 mana into this thing instead of 3, and now it turns all of your creatures into 4/4 blue and red dragons with flying. And this card can end games out of nowhere, right? We've all been in the Commander games that were at like a standstill where there's all these creatures on the board, but if one person attacks, you might be able to do a lot of damage, but then you're going to get the crack back and it's going to do a ton. And everyone's just like, we're all dammed up, right? There's just stuff everywhere and there's no way through. Dragon Shift is the card you use to get a critical mass of creatures on your board, and you just need a way for them to have evasion. And so why not just give them all flying? Dragon Shift is awesome for that. It can get above everything. You can alpha strike somebody over the top instead of dealing with their board. It also is a great way to make your weaker creatures into stronger creatures. Think of any token deck here. Your 1/1s become 4/4s with flying. That's insane. But really, like, the average creature isn't 4 power or bigger. Your game-ending creatures are bigger than that. But your average creature, you're looking at like a 2/2, maybe a 3/3. A Dragon Shift almost always buffs any board. It doesn't have to be tokens. It just has to be something smaller than a 4/4 the flying. One of my favorite cards to combo with Dragon Shift is Young Pyromancer. You can run these cards in a Spellslinger deck, and so you're making a bunch of 1/1 elementals with Young Pyromancer from the counter spells or cantrips that you're playing, and then you get to turn 7 and you overload all your 1/1s into 4/4 dragons. That could be a ton of damage out of nowhere that players aren't ready for, and all you had to do was have Young Pyromancer sitting there getting value off of the instants of sorceries that you played. Dragon Shift is kind of an unassuming win condition card. It doesn't say win the game on the card outright. But when you have the right board, you just need to break parity is what they call it. If you just need to find a way to get through the dam that all the players have made together of all of their creatures that no one can attack, Dragon Shift is the way for you to be able to get through and take out the most menacing player and all of their board with it. Of all the cards that are on this list, this card might be the most game-changing for what its effect is, especially for one player. Sabo's Decree is a 6 mana instant, and it says choose a creature type. Target player reveals his or her hand and discards all creature cards of that type from it. Then destroy all creatures of that type that that player controls. They can't be regenerated. What a blowout. A bunch of the cards on this list for this video have been ways to defend against blowouts. Sabo's Decree is the card for the player who likes to push the button to say, you're a problem, I'm taking you out. How many decks do you play against on a regular basis that are typal decks? This card hits so many decks, and the most popular ones too. Almost every most popular commander that's in the format right now are typal decks. And you just choose the creature type of whatever that deck is trying to play as, and you nuke them. And not just nuke what's on the board, but you nuke the follow-up too, because all the creatures in their hand are gone as well. It's crazy. This card is insane. 6 mana and remove a player from the game, essentially, right? Who's the problem player who's running a rabbit deck and they're going out of control? You just Sabo's Decree them, and now they have to rebuild their hand to even get some rabbits back into their board. It's such a cool card. It's so interesting. And God forbid you copy this thing and you do it to a whole bunch of players, right? Oh my goodness. It's a board wipe and a discard spell all wrapped up in one. Does this hit every player all the time? No. But it hits the most popular archetype in Commander, and that's pretty good odds that you're going to get some great value out of Sabo's Decree. This card's meta dependent. You know your meta better than I do. If you have a lot of players in your meta that play a lot of typal decks, maybe pick up a Sabo's Decree to deal with that Dragon deck. Here's a card that was really popular in Commander years ago, and it's now fallen out of favor. I'm not quite sure what happened to it. It's a really good card, so I'm going to bring it back up so that maybe players can run into this one again. It's called Sudden Spoiling. It's a 3-mana instant, and it's actually better than an instant because it has Split Second. Split Second on the card makes it so that nobody can respond to this card being cast. You cast it, and it happens. Nothing else can happen. So why would you want to do that? Well, the card says, until end of turn, creatures target player controls lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 0/2. Meaning you take their big board of whatever it is and you turn them into a bunch of 0 power creatures. There's so many applications for Sudden Spoiling that matter in almost every Commander game. This card is crazy good, and it's going to keep you alive for that one really particular turn where you need to be there, where you need to be in that game, and you just got to shut off somebody's creatures. Let's look at it. At its base form, Sudden Spoiling is a split-second fog. You just get to make somebody's combat phase become a no issue. And it's actually even better than that because there's 0 power creatures, so you can block all their 0 power creatures and destroy their attackers so that they can't attack next turn as easily. And it's split second, so there's nothing you can do about it. They just become 0/2s. They also become 0/2s with no abilities. So if any of those cards have effects like Undying on them, or similar effects that are going to bring them back from the graveyard, or flying, now they can't block, things like that, all of that's turned off. So the board's not going to come back with effects that are on the cards. The board is blockable because they're not going to fly over the top of you. It removes unblockable, so now they become blockable, right? It's everything. No abilities on the card. And that's at its very, very minimum what Sudden Spoiling does. What it does at its very maximum, in my opinion, is that it counters infinite combo creatures. The reason being is because the card has split second. So if somebody's comboing out, they've got their Viscera Seer, their Blood Artist, and their Infinite Token Maker on the board, right? They just cast it. It's there. You can respond to them doing that by saying, well, I'm going to play Sudden Spoiling, and you can't respond to this by making a bunch of tokens infinitely and sacking them. And all of your creatures are now 0/2s with no abilities. That's sick. The turn that the combo player was waiting for gets completely shut down by Sudden Spoiling because they can't respond to the split second. Like I said, there's so many applications for this card, and it matters against lots of archetypes. Your typal decks, like we already talked about, Sabo's Decree, Sudden Spoiling deals with them because it turns them all into creatures with no abilities and base power 0/2. It deals with the combo archetype, which is the next most popular archetype in Commander, at least how I see it. And so you get to deal with the creatures that are comboing and turn them off for a turn so that you have an opportunity to deal with the combo, which is really awesome. Split Second's a very powerful ability. It's not on a whole lot of cards. Sudden Spoiling is one of those cards that, like I said, had a lot of favor, and it's fallen out of favor, but it's very powerful. It's very, very good for shutting down what your opponents are going to be doing to win the game. Last call. This is the last card on the list, and I've been blown out by this card so many times. I have a friend in my play group that runs this, and it gets me every time. It's called Mystic Reflection. It's a 2-mana instant, and when you cast it, you choose target non-legendary creature that's on the board. The next time one or more creatures or planeswalkers enter the battlefield this turn, they enter as copies of the chosen creature. and it has foretell. Let's break this down just to make sure we're all on the same page here. We're going to start with foretell. So with foretell, you can pay 2 mana on your turn, and you exile this card from your hand face down. So nobody knows what it is, but you paid 2 mana right now to then use this card later on a different turn. When you use this card on a different turn, you pay 1 blue. So the difference between this and its regular casting cost is Mystic Reflection is 2 mana the turn you play it. With foretell, you're paying 1 extra mana, but you're making the cost cheaper on the turn you need it. The turn that you foretold it, they actually used it, it's only cost 1. So you can leave less mana up in the future. So you bank some mana now to then use it later. Then, what's the card do? Well, you're going to pick a 1/1 token, more than likely, or some other creature that's really, really unassuming. That doesn't matter. So if we use the example of the green player who's running a whole bunch of mana dorks, a bunch of 1/1s that tap for 1, and they're casting Craterhoof Behemoth right now. They're going to cast it. You can respond by playing Mystic Reflection and choosing one of their mana dorks, and now that Craterhoof Behemoth enters as a mana dork. It's an 8 mana 1/1. It changes that creature card into another creature card, which is arguably better than countering it, than putting it in the graveyard. Because now the player who has that creature that's not that creature anymore has to find a way to get rid of that creature to then bring it back and cast it again, right? I would much rather have somebody counter my spell and let me put the creature in the graveyard so that I can get it out of my graveyard and use it, because that's a common thing for me, than to have somebody turn my creature into something else, and now I've got to find a way to kill that thing to put it in the graveyard to then put it back into play to get the effect I wanted. It's kind of insane. This card works on more than one creature as well, but only in the instance that's making more than one creatures. It won't last for the whole turn. So for example, if somebody's playing a card that's going to make them a bunch of beast tokens, like fresh meat, like we talked about earlier, you can Mystic Reflection in response and have them enter as a 1/1 instead if there's a 1/1 token on the board. It changes that whole interaction. A really fun way to use Mystic Reflection is to hit a creature that is a 0/0 creature that has a bunch of 1/1 counters on it, right? So think lots of Hydras. They're all 0/0s. If you choose as your target that Hydra with Mystic Reflection, then whatever creature the player played enters as a 0/0 and instantly dies if you need that thing to die, right? So there's some really fun interactions for how you use Mystic Reflection. I love this card. It's kind of like a counter spell, but better in a way for creatures specifically and planeswalkers, right? It changes the plan that players have for their big nasty creature that you don't want to deal with into something that's really manageable. Thanks again for swinging by Cardboard Brewing Company. It's so good to have you here. I'm always looking for new fun cards to show y'all. So keep an eye out on the channel for some more coming.